It's the Protection Professionals Power Hour. Building better shows with skill and power. Live hybrid online too. Sharing what the experts do. Hardware, software, tested live. Helping every production thrive. Step inside, the future's now. Welcome to the Power Hour.
I know I did an edit for the music, but I didn't expect a sudden ending. Quality problems we have here. Actually, that's what I want to speak to you about. Quality problems. I've spent the last 12 hours recording some content. And quality of compressed video, you don't notice it usually. If you've just got big graphics and you've got big heads and hands wafting around the screen, you don't notice it, guys. But we all know that when you start putting in PowerPoint presentations with small text and little diagrams, and it gets compressed on the way, somewhere in the train from the screen that you send it from to the screen received by others. The quality can drop dramatically. And of course, we all know this happens, and it's been happening for ages. But of course, the difference is now parts of the industry are actually now making a change. Parts of the industry now are actually looking at this. And we were talking about a lot of this last week about video standards, but it really has come home to me this week how important this is and how we need to create an environment of quality, because that's the big difference between a production team and somebody who just throws together a webinar at 5 minutes notice. Now, Mike and I have tried both extremes, because you don't know what can break until you try and break it. And we're getting good at breaking stuff. But I'd rather break stuff and then learn from the experience on my own shows than be doing somebody else's show. Because if I get the speech wrong or the content wrong, I can re-record it because it's for me. But if I'm doing it for a customer or a CEO, they're never going to come back a second time. Let's face it. They want it right first time. And actually, yes, I'll have to mention it. The Zoom community forums always have regularly people who have not recorded properly. They've lost a connection. They've got a bad connection. There's always people in there wanting to be, well, saved from something which basically is already lost. And it's not just them, because I am on forums for other products. And I see it there as well. I forgot to record. Is there a backup somewhere? Well, no, guys. If you forgot to record, you forgot to record. Where do we go? Well, we go to our usual stand-in, which is the WTF backup. You can't afford to just record in one place. You need to record everywhere using cameras, and they can have memory cards put in them to record record what they see. Do it. If you've got switches that have the ability to do ISO recordings, do it. If you've got a way of pulling ISO feeds into a completely separate machine, hopefully in a different building on a different network, do it. If you end up with 6 or 7 different versions of the presentation at the end, and yet you streamed it to YouTube and it was fine, oh, that's great. But I tell you what, I'm often looking at recordings that, even the ones that Mike and I produce, and I think to myself, yeah, that was cool, but I'd like to take a snippet of content out of that and make it something different. And if I want to take something that one of our guests has said, and Mike, of course, has beautifully put us all into a nice grid box where we're all sitting next to each other, the quality of that particular box, of that person I now want to extract, is in compressed YouTube format, compressed into a little window inside that big box. If I want to really do a quality output, taking that clip into somewhere else, I need an original. I'm not going to get that in my final version that my production team has delivered to me onto the screen for everybody else. So I need that recording out of the camera, or that ISO recording out of your, well, the A10s do it, and I know all the other video switches now have some way of recording locally. And then there's also, of course, there are software which can go in and take ISO recordings out of the system as well. But you've got to get these all in there. They've got to be in your pipeline every single time. Because as one of my friends told me, John, I don't have you here because stuff works and looks cool and I feel happy. And you also throw in the odd joke, which keeps us all entertained. I have you here because things go wrong. There's always cock-ups. There's always things out of your control. There's always mistakes. It's called life. It happens. And John, when those cock-ups appear, I expect you to have fixed them before anyone even knows they existed. And that's why it's completely mad, as Mike would remind me, for me to turn up 15 minutes before a production with the hope that it's all there and I can just pull it together and it'll all be there automatically. I spend so many sleepless nights trying to work out, with all this hardware and software and AI, why do we have to turn up an hour before a show? It doesn't matter if the show's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, or 3 hours. You still have to turn up an hour before the show, because there's no way to fix stuff in 5 minutes. I'm hoping there will be one day, but at the moment there isn't. It's really hard. And all these apps that we use, we are streaming to 4 or 5 different places, which is great. But I can find no automation in that tool to be able to prepare stuff. I have to do it by hand every time. And it's really annoying. It's not only annoying, it's frustrating, because everything you do by hand can be ruined. So what's this big graphic of the UK on the slide to start? Well, that's about data centers. That Z company does stuff, doesn't always tell us why until it's done it. And they've been announcing new data centers. I saw a new data center announced for Saudi Arabia. Well, today I saw a new data announced for the UK. So in future, rather than my productions going to the Netherlands, which is, for those that don't know it, a just quick short hop over the sea into Europe, the top bit of Europe, we will now have a UK data center. What does that mean? Well, hopefully it means better connections, but it also means data security. It means privacy security. It means all the AI processing will be done locally in our country, which of course makes lots of corporate businesses really happy. It means that all their recordings are going to be held in the UK, not in some data center in another jurisdiction, which makes big corporate businesses very happy. Hopefully it also means I get better quality connections as well, because I do find that sometimes we go down to 720 on YouTube because we don't seem to get always a good connection to YouTube from that data center in the Netherlands. And for those checking, yes, I asked it to do 720 today, because when we did our show earlier in the week, I kept seeing comments from the restreaming platform, which is Switchboard, that we were having data problems, which of course is a surprise for me, because the data is going from Zoom to the data center and it's not even touching this room. So it can't be me. So this is my story to you today. Quality matters. I spent the last 12 hours doing a presentation. I have to put in diagrams and flow charts and all those sort of little things that, frankly, you don't want to put in. The marketing people tell you not to put these sort of things in your PowerPoints. They tell you not to have dozens of PowerPoints, but this is a technical presentation. And as it's a technical presentation, I've got to stuff it full of diagrams and flow charts and outputted text and screen shares. And they are all really, really badly degraded if I do it the standard way, with a screen share and an image uploaded and compressed and put on some streaming platform. Couldn't read half of it when it got to the end. So I had to use those backups further down in the chain to find me a better quality of output. It was great to see that my switcher, he is trying to avoid saying the words Blackmagic because I don't want to put everybody else off. But my switcher with ISO did give me a quality output because it was only one hop away from the original being the computers that were doing the screen share, HDMI out straight into that switcher. So it was a short hop. There was no real opportunity for loss of quality. I could tell the screens to output at, I can't remember now. I think I chose 50 frames a second because we're UK. We like 50. You guys might have done 60. But the difference, of course, is we all know the difference between 25 frames and 50 frames is enormous when it comes to watching a screen share. The difference in quality is enormous when it's not compressed because it's only come straight out of the HDMI feed. And somebody who can probably wax lyrical and give us the real lowdown on this hardware problem of getting quality out of his cameras and then it all being degraded all the way through the production line is going to be our mate Mike. Mike Latter has been sitting there sniggering at my dubious production techniques today, trying to get everything squashed in and finding, of course, Mike, that the squashing is what loses me the quality.
This is true.
And we can probably have a little knock at a lot of the manufacturers because this was never an issue last year. But it was never an issue last year because last year, a lot of them couldn't fix the problem, so they didn't mention it to us. But of course,
Mhm.
now some of them can fix it. They're now opening our eyes to this world of you can have better than 20 frames a second. What do you think?
Better than 20, better than 30, better than 50, better than 60. Oh, let's not push our luck now. The gaming world will say, of course, you should be doing 120, if not 240 frames a second, because we want to see every little. Of course we do. And in the gaming world, they'll say, yes, please. In the streaming world, we go, no, thank you. Because that means, and again, this is what the problem has been even in the gamers that are streaming to platforms that can't handle 120 frames a second, or 4K 120 frames a second too, for that matter. When they're playing their games, they're going, but why? It's that thing that, if you want everybody to be able to see it, let's not even talk about internet, because that's the big boy. So let's say you've got the best pipe in the world. Now you have to have the best machine to watch it on. And that's where quality also comes into play. And yes, John and I were broadcasting today at 720p, which is great, which allows also everybody that has the capability up to, certain years of hardware to be able to watch us at 720p. And you'll go, oh, but you're 720p. Yeah. There's also 1080p. Everybody go, oh yeah, well, you have to be 1080p. Well, no, you don't. You should, depending on the content. And this is where John is making the comment about that person that wants to use it smaller than a 10-point font on their slides, so that you can actually have 1080p 60, so that you can actually maybe show that 10-point font, which of course we never want anybody to ever use ever on a slide that's being presented anywhere in a building, online. I don't care. But they still do it, especially in graphs. I've seen it where it's even been as small as 8-point, and everybody goes, what does that say? Just because you can see it on your computer, everybody, when you're making the slides, doesn't mean that everybody can see it when it's on a huge projector screen locally, or even on a half decent laptop or desktop that somebody's actually viewing your actual presentation live via insert platform here, Z platform, T platform, W platform. So take it from there. But when it comes to, yes, quality matters. Absolutely, quality matters. Again, you have to make sure that the quality is good. And this is where John was getting into the camera situation, right from source. If you have a terrible quality source, it doesn't matter. It's going to be terrible all the way down. You can try and fix it as much as possible. But if somebody's only got a 720p webcam, but yet you're broadcasting at 1080p, you're going to force the 720p quality to try to, what we don't like doing, which affects quality, is upscaling. Right? We will be upscaling our 720 to 1080p because your production is 1080p. Now, should you've gone to the lower, in our case today, 720p, because your lowest common denominator of the webcam of that person that you're bringing in was 720p, should you've lowered everything down to 720p? If that person was that important, then probably you should have. Or you should have made sure ahead of time that that person that was joining you remotely, or in this case, let's take it that they were joining you remotely, has a 1080p source so that you can use it in your 1080p production. right? Because we don't want to, for the most part, change our frame rates or change our resolution rates, because you will always see the inferior quality. So if you're broadcasting even in 4K and the best cameras that you have are 1080p, there's no reason to be broadcasting in 4K.
One
Go ahead, John.
component. That's all it takes, isn't it?
Yes.
In your whole production cycle, one component that's not providing the quality, and then it just kills it the rest of the flow.
And makes it also noticeable too that they stick out like a sore thumb. You can tell that, you know, if everybody else has got 1080p and you bring that one person in that has 720p, you can tell. It will look washed out. They will look, you know, and again, you know, especially if you're even, and if for the trained eye, which I've been in this too long, so I am, you can actually tell the difference between 60 frames a second or 50 frames a second in PAL and 25 in PAL or 30 in NTSC world. So you can even tell that too, that there's a difference there too. That you can tell that if your production is actually running 1080p 60, but yet all the cameras and all your sources are 1080p 30, you can tell. Because if you're actually broadcasting out at 1080p 60 or switching at 1080p 60, the hardware is already, or software is already, has to transcode or upscale your actual feed in to match the master going out. And
this
if you're
means your
not doing
software-
it, somebody's doing it eventually.
Yeah, your software as well.
Mhm.
So many people are still using OBS. And then they're using all the, what I call the OBS derivatives. The products that have sort of started as an OBS like Copycat and have made software their own. And of course, if you look at and again, I don't really want to start naming them in case I don't name all of them, but if you take, you know, these Mac products like Mimo Live and those types of products, on the box, they seem to say that they will support these frame rates and these resolutions. But that means the device you're running them on has got to run around fast enough to support that. Any software running on any machine, as a lot of you hardcore guys will tell me, you know, you can't take vMix, for instance, and run it on a machine and then use that machine for checking your emails. It's got to be dedicated. Those guys at VizRT, let's be honest, guys, you're running Windows on PCs, but you don't want the customer to realize that. You want to tell the customer they're dedicated boxes, because if the customer realizes they're a computer, he may want to, or she may want to use it for other uses. So you lock it down and you say it's a dedicated box, even though we know it's not. It is a dedicated box for you because you want to know your hardware is only producing your software and not doing anything else at the same time for the same reason. This is why other companies with dedicated hardware devices try and say they've got the, you know, they've got the upper hand because they have a dedicated box to do something. But of course, those dedicated boxes are dedicated to the app that's built in. And again, some of the lower end products, and they really go at 50 frames a second? Do they really do 1080p? Is there a bit of compression going on in the background? And as Mike said, it's getting more obvious because now people can do things at a higher quality. The difference between the guys that did it in the high quality and the lower quality is growing. We have a great Zoomy friend who we kept saying for, I don't know how long we've been doing it, setting it to him, probably a couple of years, Mike, certainly more than months, probably a couple of years, telling him that if he's an expert in events, why has he got this really bad webcam? And of course, they then have these stupid backgrounds. They run it on a laptop with about as much power as my watch, and then wonder why their face goes all weird because their virtual background can't be processed quick enough.
Mm-hmm.
And these are guys who are supposed to be promoting products. And it's not just the Z people. I can't have a go at Blackmagic because he's always got his studio behind him when he shows off all his kit. But I have seen the VizRT guys with really, really poor quality video backgrounds, which blows my mind when they're trying to show off a video switcher, which is $20,000 or more just to purchase the equipment. I'm sorry, guys. I will criticize you because it doesn't make sense. If you're trying to persuade me to use your tool and you can't even look good yourself, go on in the comments, have a go at my background. I'm using a 1080 camera. I'm going through a Blackmagic 8M ISO, so I'm bringing the quality there. And this paint, it costs $70 a tin. It's not some sort of slap it on. It's proper hardcore, chalk based, I think it is. So it doesn't give the reflections. I went to a lot of time and expense to paint that wall to give me a proper background. Mike cheated, but he's cheated in a devious and clever way because he's using a proper photo style background. And we also don't know where he is because he has two studios and they both have the same dangling background. So he's consistent in his quality and he is well lit and he's central and he's producing that from his cameras. And his workflow, I know, is quality all the way. But it's so easy. It's so easy to do a decent job. Honestly, it isn't impossible to produce quality. It's just a few things you need to check on. But it isn't impossible to do quality. And yes, maybe you consider that if you're going to live stream something, you're going to reduce the quality for the live stream because you want it to get out there reliably. You want people to see it and you know that live is acceptable. But that doesn't mean you can't then upload a new version of the presentation at a higher quality, even 4K if you've got the ability to do it. And you've got the ability to create a 4K canvas on which you can build your elements. But I think quality is really going to start sticking its nose in all over the place this year. Our friends at Z have done a lot on quality. You can see a lot of the hardware manufacturers now are doing the same thing. They've realized that we're not all going to go to 4K overnight, but they've also realized that we want higher frame rates, we want higher quality of our recordings, and we are fed up with 4K cameras, which are then squashed into a little pipe into the rest of the flow, and we lose all of that quality and frame rates. So I think there's going to be a lot of checking up on people. And the other thing, which sort of links to this in a way, but probably not obvious, we've also heard of various people talking about crunch time for AI. AI is now getting put on stock exchanges. They're all coming to cash in on their skills, although it's not their skills, is it? Our skills, let's face it. The AI is stupid. It's learned from the stuff we put out there. So it's our skills. But the AIs are all now starting to float on the stock exchanges all over the place. That means they will have shareholders They won't just have a few greedy founders to keep happy. They want to have shareholders that will expect revenue and return. That means AI has got to do something really weird. It's got to pay for itself. And if AI has to pay for itself, you know who's going to have to pay the bill for that. It's us, the AI users. That means the 20% of YouTube, which is currently AI video created slop, could have a cash flow crisis. And that is why I bring it up, because I believe that if it's crunch time for AI, that's going to mean that a lot of people that try to cheat with AI in production, they might suddenly find it becomes a very expensive process to do that. And that could mean, I think it will mean, suddenly people are not going to be so happy about this AI generated, now expensive AI generated slop. They're going to want to go back to having decent content. And we have the content because, as I said earlier, yes, I did think about this. This was planned. We're in a loop here. And although we may do a webinar or content for an event, for a customer, what happens after the event? We've got, because we've now planned for mistakes and data, we now have the ISOs of everything that happened at that event. We have all the camera feeds, not just the one that went live at the end. We have the whole thing. That library of content, even if you give it to an AI to process, that library of content has enormous value for you and for your customers and for the event, because now you can take information from that and build another version of the event without anyone having to turn up a second time. You can produce multiple versions of that event. You can provide clips. You can provide little bits of content that were lost in the process. Mike's hiding at the moment, but if we had an ISO recording and he does something that's useful, he does everything that's useful. But if he does something and he's just smiled and we've got a smile out of him. Now there may be a point at which a reaction from him will be something that we would say in post-production, oh, I really wish we'd had him there, or well, really wish we'd had the audience on the screen because they were agreeing with what the speaker was saying. Well, if you've got all the ISO recordings of the entire event from all points of view, you've got the chance to mix that in later on. You've got to stop thinking of just one delivery at the end. You've got to stop thinking that quality is just about the final event. Quality allows you to make lots of different versions of that event, to make lots of different code snips, to make lots of different versions that you may want to stream somewhere, that you may want to put on social media. Oh, and I forgot this comment. If you're going to take snapshot images, that's when your quality between a 720 blurred P version and a high frame rate 1080p is going to make a difference, especially when you have somebody like me who quite often can't keep his hands still. And if you're not capturing me at a high frame rate, most of the time I'm wagging my hands around, they're just going to be blurs on a single frame. So if you don't capture a high frame rate, how are you going to capture me making a point when I'm pointing, unless I have to just long enough so somebody can capture the frame. I was only relatively convinced that this was a subject I wanted to speak about at the start. I have to admit, I've convinced myself much more than I expected. But have I convinced you? Have I convinced Mike? Have I convinced YouTube? Well, is there any comments? Is there anybody out there today, Mike?
Is there anybody out there? No, everybody's been quiet watching us, John, and they've been taking notes, I hope, on the quality that we are bringing to them today, which is only 720p. Yes, we know. Yes, we know.
That's the point.
Don't be telling us in chat that we're not broadcasting 1080p. We know. We did it on purpose. Again, John told you why. Is because of stability issues. And again, this is where you've got to take this also into consideration for all of us that are doing hybrids, or of all of us that are doing, yes, hybrids for sure, virtually 100%, but hybrids for sure, where you have to take into consideration that, you know, will I have bandwidth issues from that location? I have to maintain quality. Do I want to put up with bandwidth issues that are causing frames to drop? Is the client okay with that? We're going to assume no. So are we going to assume that we have to broadcast at 4K out of a pipe that can only handle 720p? Guess what? No, we're going to be broadcasting at 720p. Because it doesn't make any sense anymore, reliability and quality wise, for you or any of us to broadcast something that you do not have enough bandwidth to do properly, right? So this is where quality also matters as well, is that if you cannot get all those frames out of that location where you're at, back to the service that you're using, insert the letters here, all the way from CDNs to W's to T's to Z's. If you do not have enough bandwidth from that location to handle the amount of content that you are sending out in whatever bit rate, yes, we're going to use that too. And again, if you cheap out on the bit rate of the frame rate of the resolution you're doing too, quality matters. This is why YouTube, since we are broadcasting on YouTube, will give us a range. They say, if you're doing X, so if you're doing 720p or 1080p or 4K, I don't have the numbers memorized, but let's just say that they always give you a range between, we really don't want you down here at the lower end of that range, bandwidth wise. We really want you at the higher number of that range. They accept it, but guess what happens? The quality matters. And their quality, even though you're saying, oh, Mike, but I fit in sending a 1080p 60, but I'm at the low end. Yes, you're at the dangerous low end that YouTube is saying to you that we're okay still at 60 frames a second doing it at that lowest bit rate. But should you go underneath that bit rate? And guess what, gang? The constant bit rate situation doesn't exist anymore in streaming. So guess what? If you're set it at the lowest bit rate that YouTube is happy with, then you will start to fluctuate. So what does that mean? YouTube will become unhappy. So guess who else will be unhappy? Your viewers. And how does that affect everything? It all rolls down here, boys and girls. Quality. Because now you will start dropping frames because YouTube warned you that they don't want you at that one. We're okay with it, they say. But it really, because of the technology, you need to be at the shooting for the higher one, so that you can fit in that range. If not, at least hit in the middle. Well, and Tony's actually got a Zoom related question, which we'll come back to momentarily, about enhanced media, which just brings a whole other wonderful thing into this too, John. But well, Tony, we'll get back to you momentarily. But yes, when it comes to bandwidth, bandwidth is key from the location. Bandwidth 100% will affect the quality that you're broadcasting out. So if you do not have enough bandwidth to handle that 1080p 30 or 60 reliably, there is no reason you should not go down to a 1080p 60 version of your stream, or 30 if you really have to go down to 32. But that, what that actually means then, that you haven't taken into consideration the location's bandwidth requirements, or making sure that you do have, and here's that important word, which I think I said last week, dedicated bandwidth, dedicated upload bandwidth from that location to that actual content delivery network of your choice. Be it again YouTube, be it again, insert all our different letters. And oh yes, I'm digging into it. You, Tony, are you now into enhanced media? We all are digging. Over to you, Johnny.
Mike, it's not just YouTube. We have had some people commenting inside because they've joined us live in the Zoom audience.
Right.
So Erm's on here as well. She was apologizing that she didn't watch us on YouTube. We are happy for you to be in the audience here. That's the whole idea. We've only got 1,000 seats, but we're not going to fill those up too quickly yet. Although I'm really worried that what I'm going to do to go back to Zoom and say, excuse me, can I upgrade? But at the moment, we're okay for that. So yes, we need to talk about enhanced media. Well, enhanced media is basically Zoom saying, yeah, you know, we said you could have 1080. We didn't really give you proper 1080. We sort of compressed it a little bit to make it better for you. Yeah, we know that people now expect 50 to 60 frames a second. Yeah, we've not been giving that to you either. And most of the industry hasn't been doing it either. But it's okay. We can confess that we don't do that now, because we've now got the ability to do 50, 60 frames a second. We can do 1080p uncompressed. Oh, and yeah, when you save a recording locally, and again, I've come across this issue this day. Well, yeah, it was about 2 o'clock this morning. So this day I came across that problem. I thought, okay, some of my quality is waning, so I will record locally on my PC. And what happens when I record locally on my PC? The recording gets compressed and I can't read it properly. So Zoom come along with enhanced media, and they've come along with a new enhanced media recording as well, so that you can now pay them a little bit more and they will save your recording at the higher quality. There are lots of provisos, but when a company the size of Z starts rolling out higher quality production tools, it's only because this quality issue is hitting them in the corporates. Oh, that came out better than I expected it to as well. Remember, there are two worlds that we tend to cover here in our production world. Our production world works very well in the big events and the live events, and now we've got the challenge of doing hybrid. But because of all these big platforms like Zoom, there is a parallel universe of big corporates with very expensive and very impressive looking meeting rooms that may hold, well, some of them may hold 30, 40 people. They've got enormous 4K. Some have even got 8K screens on the wall. They've got lots of high quality cameras flipping around, picking up people that speak, pulling in all that information. And again, at that world, they've got all this high quality camera equipment at one end, all this high quality screen equipment at the other. And in the middle, there's a compressed 1080p feed. And it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good at all. So Zoom has had to look at its infrastructure like everybody else and say, we need an alternative way of getting this video data around our network. We need a better way of saving this data in our network. We need to be able to save the 1080p quality. If we don't, people are going to start complaining. Why does my Zoom look blurred? Why does my Teams look blurred? It's not just Zoom that's got this issue. It's all the platforms. They've all got this issue. And then, as points out very well, if Zoom comes along and says, okay, we're going to do this 50, 60 frames per second feed for you for quality, all those software products that we talked about earlier, who are doing their own processing, the OBS type equivalents, now, Mike, they got a problem too, because as we said earlier, they've got to process at that bit rate. They've got to process at that quality rate. They've got to process at that resolution, because if they become the bit in the chain that loses the quality, frankly, they're going to be the bit in the chain that we're going to drop.
So true. Very, very true. And again, this is where you have to be very, very careful, is that, you know, not only when it comes to, and again, we're talking about software video switchers here. So when we're talking software video switchers, again, if you have an underpowered machine for that software switcher, the software switcher, to be blunt, does not care how many resources your machine has. It will use every single resource you give it. So the more and more and more and more you want it to do, the more and more and more it's going to drag away from your machine. Plain and simple. Does it know when to stop? No, because it's doing what you told it to do. You told it to make sure that it added that graphic. You told it to bring in that 5 people, even though your machine can only handle 2. You told it that this. You told it to do that. You told it to make you look pretty. You told it to add some audio tweaks. Well, all these things don't magically take up no resources. Every little thing you tell that program to do is taking some sort of resource in one factor or another. And this is not even bringing in, oh, I got to bring in a camera. I'm going to bring in a microphone. Now I have to make sure that they're in sync because I'm bringing them in via 2 USB ports. John and I deal with that how many times a day, John, on the Z community forums? Too many. Why is my audio and video always out of sync? Yeah, wait, yeah,
not got enough plugs in it. It really is. It's
yeah.
I was looking at, because I'm rebuilding and I'll be showing it next week. I've been rebuilding all my setup, and I've only got 2 Stream Decks.
Only 2.
Audio. A video from the ATEM.
Yes. So again, as John is telling you, he actually is not using software at this point, and yet he's running out of resources, and he's not using software switching. Gang, continue, John.
No, you're right. I'm all my switching has been done by hardware. The only thing the Mac Mini does is it takes all of that and then puts it into Zoom, because we're running in Zoom in Production Studio. everything else is, as you say, is generated in hardware. The Rode is doing all the audio. Well, all the audio. It's basically just me, or me running around remotely, but it's basically just one person. It would work, of course, if I had another guest here, I could do podcasting audio with it. But as Roland said, your audio levels. That's another example of how this chain of command can make sense or no sense, because that's collecting the audio when I send it into the ATEM, because as you say, I want the data to flow from my audio and my video as next to them as much as possible together, to stop that loss. I'm trying to work out how I'm going to do a clap test into my workflow so that I can make sure that they're getting from the camera and from the audio right into my ATEM. And then I pray that because they are now synced into my ATEM, when my ATEM sends them off to the little Mac here and they go into Zoom, I'm hoping that because I've already tied them together in that HDMI feed into that webcam feed, that they won't get separated again and they will be in sync. But you're right, I am using just hardware really to manage everything. I'm only using the software as the last step to get it into the app.
Right. To be
But
the
I don't have
actual
enough plugs.
end software. Right. Mhm.
Yeah, there's just not enough plugs, and I'm building this and I'm setting it up, and I'm starting to think to myself, maybe I need a Mac Studio to do this reliably, which is frightening.
It is frightening. And again, too, this is what, I've heard this for years. I have to say this because, again, there's been the infamous, I don't want to use a video capture card. I want to. Now, again, you got to remember, I've been doing this for well over 20 years in the streaming world. So there was no such thing as being able to use USB at all.
Yeah.
For bringing in video. That didn't exist back in when I started. So take into consideration that. What's that, John?
I can't do that.
I know you can't do that.
I can't do that. And do you know why I can't do that, guys? Because if you're going to do that, you need a video card and you need a video capture card. And it turns out that a lot of the motherboards that we're running don't have that 16-bit bus connector or two devices far enough away that the fat graphics card isn't squashing the capture card. So if I do want to do that, whether I do it on my last machine or my previous machine, I need a new motherboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had this conversation earlier this week, if not last week, John, where John wanted to actually add a Blackmagic quad to his vMix machine. And I said, well, you can, but, and this is where this conversation went along, going, have you got the slot for it? And he's like, no. And everybody knows how expensive everything is nowadays when it comes to PC parts and such. So it's like, no. What kind of slot have you got? Well, I've got, I think this. And go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah.
Oh.
You need, if you are going to do quality video in and out, then you need a quality connection. Now, you may be able to save yourself with a Thunderbolt because that is a decent connector. But again, we're down to quality, aren't we? We're down to quality again. I do all of this and I'm sending it in via a webcam USB feed. So I've got to make sure that my little Mac Mini is running that USB connector at full speed. So it doesn't delay, doesn't interfere, doesn't get knocked over by whatever else is going on. So it's sharing its connection with the Stream Deck. because I assume the Stream Deck's not going to use much data, and between the two, that will work.
Yeah.
But it's a
Yeah.
rabbit hole, isn't it? You just,
It-
the deeper
it
you
is.
get into this.
Yeah, it is. Now, I'll give you some quick examples of in the vMix world from a decade ago, if not a little further. When I was fully involved with vMix, we used to hear all the time, well, I want to be able to plug in multiple USB cameras into my laptop or desktop and bring those in as video sources. Great. But I noticed when I plug in more than one USB webcam into two different USB ports, that one of the two starts fighting with each other. And it's like, because they're both going back to one USB chip. And that one USB chip only has so much brain. So guess what, gang? Ta-da! One of the two is going to fall. So this is where you would have to actually, on the PC side, the only way to really get around that properly on the PC side was actually to buy a dedicated, instead of buying a dedicated capture card, which made more sense to me, but other people wanted to stick with the USB. It was like, okay, you want to stick with USB? So now you need a dedicated USB quad card. And make sure when you get that one, it doesn't have only one USB CPU on it, but it actually has 4 dedicated USB CPUs on it, so that you do not have to worry about which camera that you just plugged in out of that 4 ports is being actually taken care of by the one processor before it actually gets into the chain. And that was another way of getting around plugging in USB cameras into getting it to work nicely in a very high-end, either a desktop or laptop, but you had to pay another $200 to get a USB PCI-based card that had 4 USB processors on it, for one for each port. And if you didn't do that, well, you just ran into the same situation again of plugging the 4 cameras in, and it only has one processor on it, USB bus, one USB processor on it, and it's going to be the same situation. You just took it away from the motherboard and you put it onto the card. Now you still have the same problem. And again, when people use laptops, this is also the same thing. Is that, okay, how many actual USB buses or USB processors does laptops have? And it's the same with the Mac as well. And this is where it all comes down to being dangerous when it comes to USB. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to plug my camera into the USB hub, and then I'm going to plug that USB hub into my Mac Mini. Guess what? Now everything that USB hub is handling now all goes down that one port into that Mac Mini. So if your bandwidth, so let's say you plugged in 2 cameras into that USB hub because you have 2 USB ports on it, you just ran into the same situation again, boys and girls, because that USB hub has only one USB bus on it, because it only can send down one USB cord into the machine.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about bandwidth. Not only is it video and audio bandwidth, which we've been talking a lot about today, making sure that you have enough bandwidth from the venue, but you also have to have enough bandwidth to bring it into that source, especially for those that are using video software switchers. There we go. Video switchers that are software based. We'll say it that way as well, because now you could actually be bottlenecking your machine before it actually comes into the software itself, could be bottlenecking it as well. And you'll go, I don't know why the quality in my video switching software is so terrible. That's what.
Yeah.
And John has offloaded that to his ATEM and said, ATEM, you take care of all the video and audio garbage that I'm feeding you, and you make it nice and clean for me so that I can plug it into my Mac Mini and have it come out nice and clear, just like Zoom wants. And out we go today.
Yeah.
And
And-
Tony actually has an interesting comment here too. John, he says, I've mostly been a PC guy. We love you, Tony. And he's, but, here comes the but. And I've heard many of these people that do this but, and I believe they're one of those people who's joining us via webinar, and he might be from Jamaica. But I saw the writing on the wall with how Zoom develops for Mac. I broke down and now have a Mac Studio. It's crazy good for Zoom. And here's the interesting reasoning that he obviously went this route. Wait for it, especially the liminal apps.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that is somewhere I'm not going to go because it will take us another half an hour or more to go on that. And all those people who don't like Zoom are going to say, we don't care anyhow. But it is interesting. I have one final curveball to leave you with before we close. The world of Intel and AMD and all their chips they're doing at the moment could be taken over by these new chips that we've got coming out now. These new Apple-like RISC-based type chips. We've got a whole new family of CPUs coming out, which are working at the laptop area. I understand they're using them at the corporate data center end as well. Maybe they'll be better at video production in the future. I can't say now. I don't think we can even guess now because they've only just started coming out. But a whole new flavor of technology could be coming to the PC world. It could make our lives easier. It could make our lives harder. But unless they sort out that little problem with oil, etc., and the cost of living, it doesn't really matter what they bring out. None of us are going to afford to buy it, which is slightly pessimistic. But if you have a look at your quality of your pipe, I think actually the bright side is if you know your pipe and you know your process, it's going to be a lot easier to show a customer how you can bring a higher quality production to their event than if they try and do it themselves. And maybe that is the happy ending to this presentation.
That sounds pretty
Have
good.
a quality system, a quality pipe for your productions, although it's becoming a slight minefield, with your expertise, this could be an opportunity for you to be able to show better production values, better quality of information, and better output. And of course, with those extra copies, you've got the ability to more content out of one webinar than they probably thought as well. So don't lose heart, production pros. I think this is, as always, a change is an opportunity. You just have to sit down and scratch your head a little bit, which is why Mike and I are both going bald, to work out exactly how you're going to do it. But if you do it, I promise you, as much as I can promise you, it will be an advantage that will win you customers. And that's all I've got to say today. I've convinced myself. I hope I've convinced you enough to at least keep an eye on this. Keep an ear on this. And make sure that your productions work well. That just leaves me to say, Mike, take it away. Oh, and by the way, if I got my rushed setup correct, there should be a subtle change to the music that you're about to hear. but I'm not sure if it worked. So we'll see.
You never know. You never know when it comes to the Production Professionals Power Hour. Thanks everyone for joining us this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to let YouTube know how much you love our content. And see you here next week for another rendition and edition of the Production Professionals Power Hour. I'm making sure that production studio is happy too. Take care, everybody. See you next week.